to go from like literally nothing, no Jesus at all in your life, to no, I'm going to live for him. Like, I'm not just going to confess and say, like, Jesus is Lord. I'm going to actually change my lifestyle. I'm going to change the way I talk, the way I act.
Yeah, and it's like, it reminds me of people in the Bible like Rahab, who was a prostitute, but was still used for the Lord's good. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our podcast, Two Peas in a Pod.
I'm Maddie.
And I'm Liz, and we're your hosts. So, first of all, I'm going to address the elephant in the room over here, is the fact that last time on the podcast, one of the things I said we were going to talk about is why we decided to start the podcast. So I'm going to go ahead and address that now. There's really not much of a rhyme or reason. I have always wanted to do a podcast. I think they're so fun to listen to. I listen to podcasts all the time. And it's just something that I've always wanted to do, and so I literally just brought it up to Maddie out of the blue. It's like, we should do a podcast together, because we talk all day long anyways.
Yes, literally.
And we know how to yap. So, yeah, that's basically how it started.
An excuse for us to, like, hang out, get together.
Right. So there's really not much of an explanation to it. I just wanted to talk about it since I forgot to talk about it last time. So that's kind of why we decided to start this podcast. Today, one of the things we wanted to talk about was our testimonies. So we're both going to share our testimonies and talk a little bit about our walk with the Lord. So Maddie, you're going to go first.
So we didn't really go to church growing up or anything, but I've always had like a guilty conscience. I've always kind of been like curious about who Jesus was and stuff. I just really didn't know much about him. And whenever I was in 7th grade, my friend Carson Annis used to go to this really big church, and a group of girls went. And she just invited me to church one day, and I kind of like consistently started going after that. And the more I went, the more curious I was and stuff. And I ended up just talking to a pastor about how you have a relationship with Jesus. And he sat down and he talked to me about it and asked me, like, was it something that I was interested in? And I went through something a little bit hard when my parents went through a divorce. I was kind of heartbroken, and just it was hard to see two people that I thought loved each other like walk away from each other. And so it kind of made me question, like, what is love? If my parents, who are married, don't love each other, then what is love? And that's really when I found Jesus. And our love on this earth is not perfect at all, but his love is perfect. And I don't know, the more I learned about Jesus, the more I realized that everything in this life is going to disappoint you, but he won't. And he was just there for me. And so when I was 15, so I was in 8th grade, I talked to the pastor, asked Jesus into my heart, got baptized, and not going to say it's been perfect since. I've gone through a lot of trials and things. I'm still not perfect. It didn't make me perfect, but I know that at the end of the day, I could not be anything without the Lord and like the hope that we have of eternity. So.
Wow, that's beautiful, Maddie. Thank you for sharing that. My story is a little bit different. I grew up in church. I have been at the same church my entire life, been under the same pastors, had a lot of the same friends through that church. But I grew up knowing who Jesus was. I heard all the Bible stories. And my parents obviously knew the Lord as well, so they raised us to know him at an early age because they had the desire for us to know him. And I just remember when I was little, I thought that I got saved when I was young. My dad would always read Bible stories with us before we went to bed, I remember. And one night he was just talking about hell and um, that we're just explaining that we were sinners and that without Christ we would go to hell. And as a kid, this is a lot of people's story, but as a kid, it's a scary thing, hell is. And you think, oh man, I never want to go there. I never want to be in that position to go somewhere like that. So I asked my dad if he would pray with me and asked the Lord into my heart. But I honestly would say that I, I don't know that I was really making a true statement of faith in that moment. It was something that was kind of out of fear, done out of fear. So when I was older, I was probably like 12. Um, I went to church camp like we did every year, and the speaker that year was so good at speaking. Still, I love his teachings. It was Phil Zimmerman. And he had given a really good sermon that just struck a chord in my heart, talking about our need for the Lord and what salvation means and what hell is. And I remember talking that night, I was uncomfortable basically all night. And I had talked to one of my counselors who was actually the preacher's daughter, Chelsea, who I'm still close with to this day. She was my counselor that year, and she, I guess, maybe saw me struggling with things or saw how I reacted to the sermon, and she brought me outside and talked to me about what it means to walk with the Lord and what things are, what you do when you walk with the Lord, how you walk with Him, how you worship Him, how you pray, read your Bible, stuff like that. And I think really in that moment was when it clicked for me. And so I prayed right then and there that the Lord would truly transform my life and that I would be dedicated to Him in everything that I do. And so, yeah, obviously, like you said, it's been a far from perfect journey in my life, my walk with the Lord. But it is amazing to see that through everything that we go through, He is still good and He is still perfect. No matter what we go through or what we face, He's always there for us. He knows what we're going through, He's been there before. Yeah, I mean, His love is perfect where we are weak.
Yeah.
And I constantly say to myself, like, I am such a broken vessel. But the Lord uses people that are broken. Like, He doesn't seek out those who are perfect because they are perfect. God accepts everyone as they are. And that's just been a beautiful thing for me to see throughout my life. There's been so many people that I've watched their lives completely change. And I just enjoy seeing how the Lord truly can take some of the people that are, you would think, the most lost, going through the worst things and living in such an awful way, and He can turn them for good. And that's just the beauty of who God is. He changes us through His word and through who He is. We have the desire to follow Him every day because of the sacrifice that He made and the opportunity that we have to be able to go to heaven. So I'm thankful. I'm thankful for the Lord's goodness whenever I fall short in my life daily. I'm daily, obviously, surrendering to Him. And that's just a part of our walk with God. I guess from the moment that I've been saved, it's been a daily surrender to Him, giving my all, but as sinners, we still fall short. So I'm thankful for His grace and His mercy in my life. I'm also very thankful for the church that I grew up in and the people who had an influence on me there, the elders, the pastors, and a lot of the older women that have helped me through a lot of things and have had wisdom in being older and just being such a good testimony to me. So I'm thankful that I had that too. I'm very thankful for the Lord's provision in my life up to this point, and I'm sure you could probably say the same, Maddie.
Yes, and I just think that it's such an important thing to um, be plugged into a church like you have your entire life. I think that is such an impact and like accountability that you really need. And honestly, I feel like CBC in a way was that for us too.
Yeah,
So, as we've talked about, we went to a private Christian college, and it was a much different atmosphere than high school, obviously. Our professors prayed with us, we had chapel on Wednesdays. Um, if we lived on campus, which we did our freshman year, we had rules and things that I think were good for us. Everyone around us that maybe went to different colleges thought it was kind of crazy, but it really didn't. It wasn't a big thing. I don't know. It wasn't terrible for us.
No, I never. I mean, and there were some, like, we had dress code and stuff like that in high school too. So things like that, silly things like dress code and stuff, weren't really a problem.
Yeah.
But no, I appreciated the rules that they had. It kind of helped have more order too in the
Mhm.
school. Like, you never had to worry about crazy, sketchy things going on because they had rules in place, and they were very strict about it. Like, if you
Right.
didn't follow them, they would maybe give you, and they would probably give you a warning. But if the behavior continued, like, they would be done with you. They would either fine you or they would kick you out. So
Yeah. And at Central Baptist College, we were also surrounded by a lot of our friends were uh, knew the Lord and stuff, so that helped too to have friends who could keep you accountable and you could go through things with, and they would just encourage you. Like Lexi was always good at encouraging us in the Lord and making us feel good.
yeah, yeah, there was a
And
lot of people that I had. I mean, like, I was in choir with, and like Caitlin,
yeah,
we had a lot of believers that we were surrounded by, and that was, like you said, it's a blessing to always walk with believers. But there's also a benefit, I think, in being surrounded by unbelievers,
yes,
because that's our mission as Christians, is to be disciples and to spread the word of the Lord. And so there actually was a lot of unbelievers too at CBC.
yeah,
They They offer a lot of sports scholarships there, and so there's a lot of people that come to the school basically just because they got a sports scholarship and not necessarily because of the fact that it's a private Christian school.
right,
So you definitely will see a lot of unbelievers at the school, but I think it's a good thing because I think I've seen so many people's life change from being
yeah.
there just because the students are required to go to chapel, and so
You're hearing the word.
yeah.
You're in. Remember that one chapel service? Um,
Yes, no, I know what you're talking about. They
it
had an
was
altar call, didn't they, at the
Yeah,
end?
and it was so powerful. I mean, like a lot of boys were crying.
Yeah, like baseball guys,
Yeah,
and
like the tough and no feelings type
that was
people.
good. Who was the speaker? It was like,
Um, I'm not
I
sure. I
can't
can
remember who they were.
literally picture his face. I can't
Yes. No,
remember
I
what his name
remember that.
was.
That was
But
good. And it's just things like that. Like, they obviously, you have to be in that environment, so
mhm,
you're going to be open to hearing what's being said, and singing the songs. I mean, I would hear people all singing the praise and worship songs even though they didn't probably know those songs or listen to that music.
right.
It was just a way to reach the lost, and I truly do think that the school has done that for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And we obviously watched some of our friends find the Lord. My husband was one of the people, my
Yeah.
now husband was one of the people who came to CBC not knowing the Lord.
Mhm.
Like I said, people come there for athletic scholarships, and Keegan actually came to CBC on a basketball scholarship. He said he had toured the school and just liked what it had to offer. So he came in as an unbeliever. He comes from an unbelieving family. And so we befriended him pretty early on just because he was outgoing. He is outgoing. And so we were like, oh, this guy's kind of fun. And he just
Yeah.
kind of joined our friend group a little bit and would hang out with us sometimes. And so we would always encourage him. Well, first things first, he kind of had a potty mouth when he
Oh
came
my
into
goodness.
college. It was just
New.
what he knew. It was
Yeah.
the norm for him. So we would always tell him, like, we would hit him or get on to him, like, hey, don't say that around us. And so he kind of knew that we didn't like that, the cussing and stuff, and he wouldn't do it around us. Like, it's funny how easy it was for him to change that. And
Right.
so, anyways, we always encouraged him, and he had guy friends too that knew the Lord, like Ridge and Dawson, people like that who loved him as a friend as well and wanted to see him walk with the Lord. And so we had all invited him to our college ministry, to
Mhm.
church with us, because we would all go to church together in Conway. And he took us up on the offer. I mean, he would come and he would listen to what was being said. And I think there's so many times that the Lord was pulling on his heart, like slowly but surely, just tugging at him. And
I'd love to have him on here to talk about his testimony, like his side of things. You know what I mean?
yeah, we'll have to have. I think we're planning on having our husbands on here, so stay tuned for that. That will be fun. But yeah, so it was just neat to see that in so many people's lives, not just Keegan's. But I think Keegan was still not quite ready to give up some of the worldly things that were in his life. But there just came a point in time. I think it was still our freshman year that he was like, you know what, I'm done with all of this. Like, I'm
Mhm.
surrendering it all. And I remember I think me and Lexi had a heavy part in talking to him about the Lord, of course, too, because she was passionate about it as well.
She's good with words too.
Yes, yeah. So I remember it was me and Lexi and my cousin Emily. We were all in the car. It was like 2 a.m. So we didn't have curfew. It was a weekend, but we were in the parking lot at CBC and we were just talking to Keegan about the Lord and sharing more with him. And he broke down in tears. I mean, he doesn't hardly ever cry. It takes a lot. He's can be a very unserious person, so it can be hard for him
Yeah.
to face his emotions like that and stuff. But he broke down and saw his true need for the Lord, and he surrendered it all at that moment. And I'm sure he would say the same that we've already said. Like, it's not been a perfect journey, but it was amazing how quickly his life turned around. Like, it was like an instant change.
Yeah.
And he stopped with the cussing. He stopped talking foul and about things, and he was excited to learn more about God. He was reading his Bible all the time. He would ask me questions. He would reach out to everyone that knew the Lord and just ask them more. He was very inquisitive and curious about what he was reading, which is always encouraging when you to see that in a new believer's life. So I remember he went home that summer, and it was kind of a test for him. It was a challenge because he was going back to an environment where he was also surrounded by a lot of unbelievers. That's what he had left behind, was all of his unbelieving friends and family. And yeah, no, he stood strong through that, and I think that was a big test of his faith early on. And he found a church there that he had attended to that he was able to go to during the summer, and he just continuously was reading his Bible and growing in the Lord more. And so, yeah, that's just one of the many people who have been impacted.
Yeah, I remember you calling me the next morning, or you were texting me. Obviously, I think I was asleep. I would go home to Sherwood sometimes, freshman year, to see Destin. But I remember you calling me. You were crying. You were like, but you had liked him pretty much since y'all had met. You had
Right, and that was my thing. It was always like a no for me. Like,
right.
I'm not going to date an unbeliever. I'm not going to missionary date.
Yes.
Um, I wanted to go after someone that knew the Lord. So it was like in the back of my mind, yes, I liked him, but I was also like, never going to happen.
Yeah.
It
But
was
it was, but
impossible.
you cared about him.
Right,
Like
as a
it
friend.
was more of seeing someone you care about like find
Yeah,
the Lord, and that's like such a you want that for everybody.
right.
So but I just remember going back to school on Monday and seeing him, and I mean, it was like a completely different person, and it's just so sweet to see because I don't think I've ever really witnessed that dramatic of a change. I've always, some of the people that I've known have like maybe known a little bit about the Lord and then kind of like finally decided to change or whatever, but to go from like literally nothing, no Jesus at all in your life to no, I'm going to live for him. Like I'm not just going to confess and say like Jesus is Lord. I'm going to actually change my lifestyle. I'm going to change the way I talk, the way I act, and truly just like live for Jesus. And
Yeah, and it's like, it reminds me of people in the Bible like Rahab, who was a prostitute, but was still used for the Lord's good. She went from living a life full of sin and just disgusting things that you couldn't imagine to being used as a part of God's story
right.
when she helped hide the spies,
Well, if we weren't broken, we wouldn't need the Lord.
right?
So you see Keegan go through this change. When did you guys like think about starting a relationship or start talking or things like that?
Um, Keegan says, like, after he came to know the Lord, he had probably thought that I was pretty or whatever. Like, he would say that.
Uh,
He has said that before.
yes.
Like, but he never really liked me like that. At least he says. He could be lying. But he
He
said
was
one,
lying.
like, after finding God, he feels like it really, his mind was changed about me. And maybe also I think part of that was because he said he saw that I was a believer, and he always thought that I was too good. Like, he's like, I'm a sinner and I'm do all these bad things. She's too far gone. Like, I don't know. She's too good for me is kind of
Yeah.
what he said before. But yeah, I didn't. I knew that I liked him, and seeing that he was a believer, it wasn't something that I was like, oh yes, he's a believer. I could date him now. Finally, like
Mhm.
I'm not being held back by some, it was not like that. It was like, for one, I was encouraged in the Lord. I was just encouraged to see him as someone that I cared about, like you said, find the Lord and to have a desire to walk with him. So really, my main concern was, okay, I'm going to pray for him, and I'm going to pray that he continues in this, and that this is not something that just is like a phase that he's going through or something. So
Mhm.
I would just pray. I would pray for him to continue growing. We still talked because we talked all the time before as
Yes.
friends, but things kind of started to change to a more of like, wow, like I really care about you, and like
Mhm.
again, he said his mind was changed, his eyes were kind of open in that he saw me as more than a friend or started to see me as more than a friend. So we talked for like, I think it was 5 or 6 months before we decided, like, okay, I think that maybe it's time for us to start to form a relationship. And so, yeah, we started dating after like 5 or 6 months of him
So,
walking with the Lord and figuring out more about his relationship with God and stuff.
what year was that in college?
2019, I think. It
Okay.
was the very end of
And
summer. We
okay.
actually were already back in school in 2019. So it was like the start of our sophomore year when we
Gotcha.
started dating. I would say dating. So we started dating our sophomore year of college. So, I mean, we dated for most of our college years. And honestly, now that we talk about it, we think that we probably should have waited to date a little longer. We, were- I think there was just a lot of immaturity still. Just we were young and still figuring out life and figuring out life away from our parents on our own and stuff like that. And so I think there was complications in our relationship, just silly, trivial things that could have been avoided just because of our lack of maturity in that time. So we do kind of say like we wish we would have waited a little longer, but also thankful for all the things that we had to go through to like show ourselves or to be shown what areas we needed to grow in and how we needed to work on ourselves and different things to make things work.
I genuinely think that it helps. Me and Dustin have been through a lot too, and I feel like it's been easier being married because we've already been through a lot of uh, situations and things that we've figured out before we got married. So now it's like we kind of know how to like navigate those things. Obviously, there's still things that we have gone through married that we haven't been through before, but I just feel like our relationship is stronger because those years of immaturity and kind of figuring each other out and stuff. So
Yeah, I guess that's true. You are able to weed some things out early on, maybe through your relationship before you even get to marriage, and yeah, so you don't have to worry about those as much in marriage. But it's true that the older we get, I think the more we are trying to become a better version of ourselves. As
yeah,
we grow up and as we continue on in our lives, I think that as humans, we want to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. And so,
I've realized more of my flaws, I guess. I say that I don't not that I didn't think that I was flawed, but you see more things about you learn more things about yourself that you're like, "Oh, maybe I don't like that about myself. Maybe I should."
yeah,
You have things that you should change, and maybe when you're younger, you're just kind of stubborn and you're like, "There's not really things. I'm I'm good.
right.
It's nice sometimes."
Yeah. So we ended up dating for, let's see, 2019, August, the end of August 2019 is when we started dating. And then we got engaged in April of 2022. So obviously we were dating to marry. And so marriage was always something that we knew we wanted. Um, we just decided to kind of wait, I guess, until I had gotten out of school and everything. But we didn't have a very long engagement. We got engaged in April, and then we got married in October of the same year. And we were also surrounded by a lot of other people that were getting married. Like you and Destin got married in March
Mhm.
before we were ever even engaged.
Yeah.
And then Rebecca, my cousin, and her husband Mac, they got married in April. And then Emily, my cousin, and her husband Zachariah got married in July. And so it was like the year of
Year of
weddings. I
yeah.
was in 3 weddings, and well, counting. Sorry, guys, that was my manager calling. So yeah, love was in the air that year, that is for sure. But I enjoyed it. It was so fun. Like
Yeah.
I was something else I was going to say is throughout our time of dating, it was refreshing to be surrounded by other believers that were in the same stage of life as us. Like you and Destin, obviously, we had you guys, and we were all a close friend group. And then I also had both of my cousins who were in the same stage of life, like they had serious relationships and were close to marriage and stuff like that. So marriage was, yeah, on the table for pretty much most of our relationship. It was something we both desired. We wanted a family together. And so, yeah, we got married in October. And then, oh, my wedding day. So I got married at the end of October. Well, like one of the last weeks in October, October 22nd. And I always knew I wanted to have an outdoor wedding. It was just something I loved and desired to have. So I planned for that, and I thought fall would be a good time. You know, it's not too hot in Arkansas, and it's not too cold yet. And you usually don't have to worry about rain in the fall. So our wedding day comes, and actually I'll say the night before, so we were on our way to our rehearsal dinner. We had the rehearsal at my church, because that's where I got married, was in the field outside at my church. We had the rehearsal dinner, and then we had the rehearsal there, and then we had a dinner at my aunt's house that we went to afterwards. This is where all the trouble began. We were in our car headed to the rehearsal dinner of our wedding, and our tire blows out.
All I hear is,
da-dum, da-dum. Oh, it was
and
so
me
bad.
and
It was so
Sierra are
loud.
like looking at each other, and we're like, that did not sound okay. And Keegan's like, the tire, it just blew. He's so upset.
No, we just knew, and you could feel it immediately that something was wrong. So we had to pull over in the McDonald's parking area, whatever. And luckily, like people, I think my dad and stuff were either right ahead of us or behind us, and they were able to pull over.
I think helped too.
Yeah, Daniel. They were able to help us get our tire fixed, and we got on our way. But I was laughing about it. I think Keegan was more stressed out. It was his car, though. Like, I think he was more worried about it than I was. I thought it was funny. So then we get to the rehearsal dinner. I think that went pretty well. I had we had a fire, and we roasted marshmallows and had desserts and stuff like that. And it was just fun to have that fellowship with everybody. And then the wedding day comes. And
No, I'm just kidding. It was
honestly,
so
it was
pretty.
beautiful.
It was
like the weather, it was
Yeah.
75 or something. Like it was
felt so
perfect
good.
fall weather.
Yep.
And throughout the day, I wasn't really stressed. I was like, this is my wedding day. Like, it's happening. I had a lot of help. There was a lot of people there from my church and friends and family that wanted to help and did help. And we got things set up. Well, around lunchtime, my wedding was at 4. Around lunchtime, I started to notice that the wind was picking up. And it ended up being a very windy day, which, of course, no one can predict. And you would never think about something like that with an outdoor wedding.
You're like thinking rain, cold,
hot.
No, not wind.
Yeah, no, never wind. So, yeah, it ended up being pretty windy. And the photographer and videographer came, and I was already ready at this point. I had been outside and known that it was kind of windy, but I don't think I knew the extent of it. So we went out to take our pictures with me and the bridesmaids, and oh my word, that wind was a blowing. You would have thought it was a tornado coming. Our hair was flying everywhere. With girls, it's so hard to take pictures.
My dress had like a slit, and so it kept like flying up. And I was like trying. Well, you continue the story, but
no, I mean that was the start of it. I was like, "You're kidding me! It's this windy outside. How is our pictures gonna work?" I was like, "Okay, maybe it will calm down. We'll be okay. It'll just be these pictures." And really, the pictures are not that bad that I have.
They
Like,
look so good.
I thought it was gonna be worse than it was, but yeah. So it was very windy, and I was like, "Come on! Why on my wedding day does it have to be the windiest day Arkansas has ever seen?" So after that, really, there wasn't much else that happened. It was just like the stress of leading up to the wedding. Something else is they had a problem. Our reception was going to be still outside next door in the barn that we had, but it wasn't like a barn. It was like, I like to call it a shell of a barn, which they're actually working to update it a lot more right now too, but it was just an open barn. I don't know how to explain it.
Like an awning type
Yeah.
thing, really tall, like
Metal awning basically
Yeah.
is what it was. But so anyways, the tablecloths, they were trying to keep the tablecloths on the tables, and them suckers were not having it. Like, they were flying away. We had these sheet things draped down from the top of the ceiling and stuff, and it was like, oh my goodness, it was just blowing everywhere. So they were putting stuff on the tables to try to hold things down, and I think for the most part later on it kind of settled down and they didn't have to worry about it. But then, like, we were supposed to have down the aisle, we had like big logs, and they were supposed to have jars of like pampas grass and stuff, just because that's what I wanted. And it was simple, but I thought it would look good.
Yeah.
Well, those would not stay. I found out as I was walking down the aisle that those had not stayed in place, and so they ended up putting the pampas grass in between the chairs and the logs that were at the end of the aisle, and so they got it to stay that way, but it still didn't look like it was supposed to. So, anyways, so the wedding happens. And obviously, with an outdoor wedding, audio and stuff like that is kind of difficult. And so the the mics were cutting in and out. Um, Not to mention, this day was the day of the North Little Rock Air Show, and that airport is directly across the street. The airport, I'm not kidding, is directly across the street from my church.
Yes.
And so we had looked at the schedule, and we were like, oh, the air show is going to be done in plenty of time. Like, it's not going to be a problem for us. No. They had them big old C-130s headed back to their airports in the middle of my wedding. So we're already having audio problems, so we can't hear much of what's being said. We have to kind of all sing and just go with it. I don't know. I mean, and Nate, I love him to death, but I don't know if he had done a wedding before. I don't know. I remember Lisa having to help him walk through a lot of it. There were just things that he did out of order. At one point, I was like, no, you're doing the wrong thing. We got to go to the vows or something like
Yeah,
that.
you were telling him what to say, kind of.
So we had that, and then, in the middle
Your
of the
veil
ceremony.
was like
Oh, my.
blowing. I was trying to keep your veil down while trying to keep my dress
Yeah.
down.
I had a cathedral-style veil at that, of course. And that thing, I felt like my hair was going to be ripped out every time. I would, like, tilt my head back. I remember I was like, oh, my word, it's going to fly out. And so, yeah, the wind was a mess. But anyways, yeah, so in the middle of the ceremony, like, do you, Elizabeth? I mean, that's kind of how it went. And that sucker was loud. It was to the point where everybody had to just sit there awkwardly.
No, we were. We were just sitting there waiting. We were like, okay.
Wait for it to pass. Nobody asked for an air show on my wedding. Thanks. But anyways.
Keegan could have like had some banners hanging from it at least.
Oh, and then, so yeah, after the ceremony was over, I don't know, it's just hard because as a girl, you dream of having your wedding be so perfect. And it's just, your wedding day is the day that you dream of as a young girl. And so I had dreamed of it all the way up to that point, and I just remember getting at the end of the aisle, and I just started bawling my eyes out. I was crying. I was like, this is the worst. Everything's going wrong. How could I have prepared for this? I don't know what's going on. I don't know. I was just so upset. But I had all my bridesmaids come, and they were trying to cheer me up, and
it really
helped.
was not that bad. Like, at the end of the day, like, it was so pretty.
But of course, to me, I mean, it's
Oh,
my
yeah,
wedding, and I
no,
knew
for
everything that
sure.
was supposed to go on, and,
Yeah.
unexpected
But I don't
things.
think anybody else noticed besides the C-180s or whatever in the sky.
Yep. So then we moved on to the reception. I think the reception went a lot better. We had live music, and that was fun.
I about threw up giving the speech.
Yeah, you were pregnant, so.
No, but I was nervous.
Oh, yeah. You were also sick on the day of my wedding, though, because you were early on pregnant.
Freshly pregnant.
And I actually didn't know this at the time, but Rebecca was also pregnant with Judah, and she was fine, though. I don't remember seeing her very sick. Maybe she was good at concealing it, but anyways, the reception turned out to be really good, I thought. I mean,
it was fun.
And then one of the best parts of my favorite parts of my wedding was my dad had set up, I asked him to do it, and he went all out for it. He had set up a fireworks show to be kind of like right before our send-off. So everybody sent us off, and then we stopped, and before they sent us off, we stopped and had the fireworks show, and the sky was literally lit up. It was amazing.
It was so pretty.
I had never seen a fireworks show like it, honestly, because it was also kind of low, which that probably wasn't planned, but it was at like the perfect height. It wasn't like you had to break your neck to look up in the sky.
Yeah.
I don't know, it was right. And so our pictures, those are my favorite pictures with the entire sky lit up with fireworks, and I don't know, that was fun. And so yeah, then we had that, and then we had our send-off, and we were able to have one of my great uncles, he has a bunch of old cars, and so we borrowed one of those, and that was fun to drive off in. But I think everything else went okay, but I had a really hard time with things, just thinking that it didn't go anything like I wanted it to, and it was discouraging.
That is hard.
And so on our honeymoon, I think a lot of the time in the beginning, I was just kind of sad. I was like, why did my wedding turn out like this? I'm just an overthinker, and so I couldn't stop thinking about it, but I will say I'm very thankful for where we went on our honeymoon, and like we went to Belize, and it was an all-inclusive resort. It was a small resort. We literally loved it. Like, it's one of the best weeks of my life. I was so thankful to have such a good honeymoon because it kind of made up for the fact that I had thought that I had such a bad wedding and stuff. And so, yeah, no, that was so much fun, and we got to do so much. And the resort was amazing. I would love to go back there. The people that worked there just loved everyone that came. They knew your names and stuff like that. And so that was my wedding experience. And yeah, Maddie, you want to talk a little bit about your marriage and how you met your husband? I know you've talked about that a little bit, but more about y'all's story and leading up to marriage.
Yeah, so we met in fifth grade. I think I've said that. We had like crushes on each other, but obviously we're 10. Um, and then we just remained friends. And then high school, we started dating in 10th grade, dated all through high school, broke up right before we graduated high school. So I went into college single, but really just for a little bit because me and Dustin kind of worked things out. Um, and so we dated all through college. I honestly wish that we would have gotten married sooner. I just feel like, I don't know, marriage is like so much more fun than dating because you get to live together, be together. But I was always like scared because I didn't have like a full-time job. I didn't know how we were like financially going to be able to do that. So
Right.
we did wait. We waited till our graduate. Actually, no, we didn't. We got married in March of 2022. I graduated May of 2022. So we were married a couple months while I was still in college, but I had an internship um, at Bologna Elementary. So I was just really going to school for those couple of months. Destin kind of provided for us for those couple of months. And then, so yeah, we got married March 19th of 2022. So that was like my spring break because like I said, I was doing that internship. So it was spring break for school. We got married at a venue that my dad did all the heat and air for. He knows the lady and um, does work for her or whatever. So he kind of worked off the venue for us because we would not have been able to afford that.
Yeah, no, that was nice. I remember that. I was like, wow. It's a beautiful venue too, where y'all
Very
got
beautiful.
married, and so
Very expensive, very, I don't know, elegant kind of.
yeah,
But they had two separate buildings. So they had a chapel area and then they had like a reception area. We got married in the chapel and then had the reception at the reception part. We had a really good wedding. It went by so fast though, but I think that's just how it is.
yeah, yeah. Your wedding was fun. One of the things that sticks out to me is, well, first of all, it was my best friend getting married. None of my other close friends or family had been married yet that were around my age, and so it was kind of like a surreal thing. I remember you walked down to Love Like This by Lauren Daigle, and that song already was such, like, I loved that song. And so I remember the moment. Well, first of all, I was walking in front of you where you were going to be, and I could not gather myself. We were about to go in, and I'm just sitting there bawling. I'm like,
Aww.
get it together, Liz, get it together. But I just remember that moment when the doors open on the song and the part you walked in on. I'm just like, oh my goodness, that's my best friend. Like, she's getting married.
Yeah, it really was an emotional moment. Like, because I feel like really I've spent so much of my life with Dustin. Like,
Yeah.
he has been a really big part of my life. I mean, I was 10 years old saying I wanted to marry him, and, I'm 22. I'm not 22 right now. I was 22 when I got married, and finally, like, it's like this dream come true, fairy tale type. You're going to spend the rest of your life with this person that you dreamed of being with your entire life, basically. So,
Yeah, it's like a love story that's in the movies where they start out knowing each other at a young age and fall in love.
yeah, with some rough scenes cut, but that's okay.
Hey, that's a part of there's always rough scenes in a love story. So
Yeah. After our wedding, we just went to Hot Springs for a couple of nights just to get away. We didn't really have a big honeymoon. Like I said, I was still in school and I was in the middle of my internship, so I wasn't even able to have a job outside of that because it's a job in itself. Um, so Yeah, we just went to Hot Springs. It rained the entire time.
Oh
I
no.
slept the entire time. It was like I've never slept that much in my whole life. We would get up like really late, and then we'd eat, and then I'd want a nap, and then we'd get up, eat, and then we'd go to bed. Like I was so exhausted. But I think it was just like the wedding planning on top of
Yeah.
school, um, being in a classroom with kids, you know, every day. It was just a lot, but it was it wasn't bad. I just needed a moment to relax, I guess. And then we ended up coming back to our apartment. I had homework the rest of the week and then finished out our internship. We did take a trip that summer. We went to the beach to Destin, Florida, for a week. That was like our post honeymoon, I guess.
Didn't you go like, what is that, parasailing or whatever over the
Yeah.
ocean? You guys, Maddie is not the type of person like, okay, I love things like roller coasters, skydive. I've always wanted to go skydiving, like dangerous.
Daredevil.
Yeah,
Yes.
things like that are fun to me that get your adrenaline pumped, you know? Maddie is not that person.
Uh-uh.
And that's where we differ in a lot of ways. Like I always try to get her to do things, to force her to do things, but she's just not about those kind of things. So you didn't even tell me till like way later on.
Really?
Yeah, after you got back and you're like, "Oh, Liz, did I tell you that I did this?" She literally went parasailing.
Yeah, so okay, so I've zip lined before, and like Dustin kind of convinced me that it was like the same thing, but above water with sharks,
Yeah.
you know.
Ooh,
But he
yeah.
made it sound like it was not that scary. Okay, the day he signed us up, like I don't even know, days before. Okay, and so you know, I'm like, oh yeah, it's fine, it'll be fine. Like I'm okay. That morning, I was about to throw up. Like I couldn't eat anything. I almost had to like I was telling him the whole time, like, just cancel it. Like, let's just do something else. Like, I'm good. Like, I changed my mind. Like, he had to literally drag me there. But
And I can't believe he convinced you.
I know. Once we were there, it was fine, but we kind of showed up to like a sketchy place too. So that did not make me
Oh boy.
feel any better. I was like, is this just someone's like backyard and they just do this for fun, or is this like a legit thing? Like because I wasn't in charge of like signing us up for anything. Like he did all of it.
Right.
And we literally pull in to a house, and the girl comes to the door to check us in on her iPad, and then we just go to the boat dock, and I'm like, I'm not feeling too good about this. Like, but I mean, I guess they were legit.
Yeah, and you showed me the video. I was like, "No way. How did Dustin convince you to do this?"
Yeah, and then the boat driver, captain, whatever, he was like, "Do y'all want to be dipped? Like dipped into the
Oh
water?"
no, yeah.
And I looked at him and I was like, "No, no, that's okay." And they dipped us for sure. They were
Oh.
like lowered us into the water. I mean, I'm like putting my feet on top of my head, trying not to touch the water. I was literally petrified, but they all thought it was funny. Like Dustin was loving. Dustin's like you. Like he likes daredevil, adventurous stuff.
Yeah.
I just like my feet on the floor in control.
No, that would scare me, honestly, if they did me. I don't know. I have a fear of sharks, though. After
No.
growing up watching Shark Week and Soul Surfer and all those kind of things,
Yes.
like, I've always been scared of sharks.
Literally, that a whale could have just swallowed me up. So yeah, that was our honeymoon. It was super chill, but we had so much fun.
Oh, yeah, and not too long after that honeymoon, you had a nice surprise come along, huh? But we'll get to that next week. That's all that we have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed hearing more about our testimonies, our marriage, a little bit more about college.
So make sure you tune in next week to hear more about what we decide to talk about.
Thanks again for listening, and make sure to email us if you have any ideas on what we could talk about, or if you have any questions that you want us to answer on the podcast. Our email again is the number 2, peas in a pod, ml@gmail.com. It'd be fun to hear what you guys want us to talk about.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.